What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you the Season 5, Episode 1 review of Samurai Jack entitled XCII, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the Roman numerals for the number 92. So, first things first, where have I been? Well, my last month hasn't been going the way I planned. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and a severe bacterial infection that was in part caused by the autoimmune disease. So I've just been very, very sick. And unfortunately, that has obviously thrown some kinks into my uploading plans, but I'm here today to bring you the review of Samurai Jack, so let's get it. First off, let me say I have very high hopes for this, which I believe will be the final season of Samurai Jack's. Of course, it was a childhood favorite of mine. I've seen the entire series multiple times over the years. I really loved it as a child and even as an adult. And I expect great things from it. Not only because it was my favorite, one of my favorite childhood cartoons, but also because the series was just beautiful. I mean, that's really the only way to put it. I'm not so sure about the new creative direction that the series is taking in terms of it being dark and edgy. But then again, I like dark and edgy. So maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised by this. So let's get into this episode review. Let's talk about the opening scene first. I was very taken aback by how similar the art style was. I wasn't really expecting that. I had seen some clips of course, the trailer and some clips from Season 5 where the art style was a little bit darker, a little bit edgier, a little bit grittier. But I was really taken aback at just how similar the art style was. In fact, it was so similar that I had to pause the video for a second because I thought I was watching the wrong episode. I thought I had accidentally downloaded the wrong episode, so I had to go back and check to make sure I was actually watching the first episode of Season 5. That's how similar the art style remained. And of course, in terms of its art style, the innovation is still very top-notch. I like the electro communication thing that was going on with some of the characters in the opening scene, where they had these like antennae, and there was electricity going back and forth between their antennae, and the electricity would show up as words or pictures, basically pictograms. I thought that was very innovative. Also, the sonic experience of Samurai Jack also remained very distinct and very similar. The way it manipulates silence, especially its manipulation of silence through the absence of dialogue, that remained the same. One of the most famous episodes of Samurai Jack to utilize this techniques of the absence of dialogue in order to manipulate silence and therefore sound was the episode of Samurai Jack where Jack is basically going through all the 4 seasons, and the entire episode is just a visual experience and also the sound of the world, but no words are spoken. So that was very similar. And also how the absence of dialogue brings the sound effects to the forefront. So that's still the same. Also, the music is, of course, incredible and awesome. So let's talk about that opening fight sequence. I'm not sure how I feel about these new weapons that Jack is using. The grenade launcher, the the Rambo style knives, the electro staff, the machine gun. Of course, those weapons are all badass and it's a part of the action, so I like it on that level. But the reason why I'm not so sure about the use of these weapons is because I can really feel the loss of the symbolic power of Jack's sword. I mean, that sword was forged by the gods as a weapon that would defeat Aku. So in that sense, the sword is a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of goodness. And so the absence of that sword, of course, foreshadows the absence of, in some sense, Jack's hope, and in some sense also his goodness. So the symbolism of the absence of the sword corresponds to both a philosophical shift in terms of the absence of goodness and hope for Jack, but also an aesthetic shift as well. Because, like I said, this show visually is darker, edgier. Jack is more gritty, more grizzled. He has the long flowing hair now. He has the long beard. He looks unkempt, almost to the point of being feral to a certain extent. And so I'm really missing Jack's sword here. And everything that I said about the philosophical and the aesthetic shift of the cartoon was basically confirmed in that opening fight scene where he uses all the weapons except the sword that he's known to use. And also later on in the episode, we learned that Jack has lost the sword. Like, apparently he was in a fight and he dropped his sword and it fell over the edge of a cliff, and I was just like, damn, man. Not only has he lost the sword, but is he ever going to get it back? I mean, the power of the symbolism of that sword is just so awesome and striking. I mean, he's lost his sword, so now, in a sense, he's lost his way. And I guess 50 years of torture and alienation, which is really what Jack has been going through this entire time, will do that to you. Will cause you to lose your hope. Will cause you to lose your goodness in some sense. Will cause you to just, lose your way. Man. Now let's talk about the birth scene. The birth scene, as I call it. This is some very crazy occult shit going on right now, man. They were not joking when they said that this was going to be darker than previous seasons. So in the birth scene, there is this woman giving birth to basically darkness in the form of babies who are known as Aku's daughters. Just as a side note, I wonder why they made them daughters rather than sons. I thought that was a interesting decision. I'm not sure if that will have any significance down the road, but I just thought it was interesting to note that. So this crazy occult birth scene shit is going on, right? And this is a little bit different from what has been going on in the past. Aku, it seems like, now has people who are not just worshiping him like as this powerful demon, but worshiping him religiously, along with child indoctrination and child soldiers. I mean, this is some, like I said, very weird occult shit going on. It's basically a child abuse cult, which is much darker than anything we've seen. I'm not sure if we've ever seen some crazy shit like that in Samurai Jack. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. But this really seems like a time and a place where Aku has completely won, and he's won in a multitude of ways. So it seems like now it's not just about Aku's social power through the direct application of violence, but now it's about some sort of mental control, mind control as well, because it's Aku's social power being demonstrated through all the social forces of like culture and religion and this occult shit going on. I mean, it's really mind bending to see this. This is something, like I said, that I don't remember seeing from previous episodes. I mean, from previous seasons. Aku, of course, has always had his henchmen and assassins to do his bidding, but they worked for him. They didn't really worship him in this sense. Now it seems like there's some sort of Aku demon religion thing going on. Also, let me talk about briefly the visuals of Samurai Jack. I've already said previously that it still retains its very distinctive visual style, but it's just, of course, it's just beautiful, so I have to talk about the beauty. One of the highlights is the scene where Jack is riding on his motorcycle, and as he's riding, the backdrop shifts and changes. So we get a desert wasteland. We get Jack riding through a mountainous region at night. We get him riding through a forest that has beautiful pastel colors. It's a very beautiful shifting landscape, and it's also a nice visual metaphor of Jack's alienation, because we see that Jack has no place to call home. He just rides incessantly through the world, going from place to place, never having any place to call his home. Another highlight of the visual beauty of the episode was the action sequence in the opening scene. The way he used the motorcycle as a weapon, I thought that was pretty cool. The electro staff going inside one of the Aku robots and twisting the wires. So that was another visual highlight that was pretty cool. Another highlight was the entire forest scene, in a lot of different ways, really. So we have the forest scene with the beautiful pastel colors, the beautiful trees, the falling leaves, the stream. And again, it's another very beautiful visual metaphor where a lovely, idyllic scene gets transmogrified into Jack's horror and guilt. Really, it's a visual display of his guilt and his hopelessness, and I'm not sure if this is objectively the case, but for Jack, it certainly subjectively is the case that he feels like he's failed to the point where he has abdicated his moral responsibility, which was his moral responsibility to defeat Aku. And for those of you who are familiar with anime and manga, specifically the manga Berserk by Kentaro Miura, this forest scene was really reminiscent of Berserk, in the sense that the forest scene starts off as beautiful, but then gets transmogrified. It turns into this surrealistic, ghastly, horrifying images. And it's as if the boundary between Jack's dreams or whatever is haunting him, his nightmares, the boundary between that and his reality, the physical reality around him, has just broken down. And so Jack's physical reality is a manifestation of his tortured mind, even to the point now where he seems to be going insane. Like in his fight with Scaramouche, and in the middle of the fight he starts hallucinating, and there are children who are basically morally indicting Jack, telling him that he failed, that he's lost his way, that he was supposed to defeat Aku and come back to the past and set everything right, and he just wasn't able to do that. And so he's being racked by the guilt produced by his failure. And going back to the motorcycle scene where Jack is riding through these shifting landscapes on his motorcycle. This raises the question, what has Jack been doing all this time? Because we learn in this episode that 50 years has passed. So in the interim, what has Jack been doing? And it seems like Jack has just been on his Mad Max shit. He no longer sees the fight against Aku as fulfilling a moral obligation. It seems like now the years have worn on him to the point where he's no longer fighting to defeat Aku. He's now fighting to assuage the guilt he feels over his failure to defeat Aku. And we see this, of course, in the forest scene with his father. He's being indicted by his father. His father is like crucified and burning, and then that the fire spreads and the forest starts to burn. So that's what it seems like is happening now. Jack just goes from place to place, essentially putting out the fires that Aku starts. And we see this in the fight with Scaramouche, where Scaramouche just shows up at a village, destroys the village, kills everybody, and just waits for Jack to show up. And we know this has happened on more than one occasion, but because Scaramouche tells us that, why did it took you a bit longer to show up this time, Jack? Where have you been? And if you think about it, that's really, really fucked up. I mean, for somebody to just come to a village of innocent people, destroy the village, kill all the people, and then just wait for Jack to show up so he can fight Jack. And it just seems like Jack is going through this endless cycle of fighting bad guys but never winning. And the death and destruction just continues to mount as the years pass by. Also, let me just briefly talk about how this shift to a darker, edgier, grittier aesthetic has in some ways shifted the fight between Jack and Aku. So the fight between Jack and Aku now happens on a level that I won't say it didn't happen like this before, but now it's this conflict, this level of conflict has been brought to the forefront. So, of course, the fight between Jack and Aku was always a physical fight. Like, of course, it was foreshadowed that Jack is supposed to physically defeat Aku. But now the fight is much more psychological and much more emotional in a way that it was not before. It seems like the writers have ramped up Jack's neuroses and by extension his internal conflict as well. And so that's a level of antagonism and a level of conflict that was not really prominent in the previous seasons of Samurai Jack. So now let's talk about the fight between Jack and Scaramouche. And of course, I have to begin by saying that what a fucking awesome character Scaramouche is. A singing, magical android assassin who's on his purple pimp shit. A purple pimp trench coat. That is just awesome. And of course, the choreography was awesome as well. It seems like the writers have not lost, and the writers and the animators have not lost a step here with respect to how they use their imagination to choreograph these fight scenes. For example, like Jack's reflection in the sword when he flies by, Scaramouche's knife that emits frequencies that destroy metal, Scaramouche with the magical flute that's able to control objects. This was all very imaginative and just awesome. Of course, and also I can't fail to mention the way Scaramouche's singing was incorporated into the fight. Like I said, a singing magical android assassin who also does jazz scatting throughout the fight. Like, that was awesome. It was a perfect symbiosis or coordination between the visual action and, again, the sound effects. The sound effects and the sound of the world of Samurai Jack has always been awesome, and of course Scaramouche is just a manifestation of that sonic awesomeness that is Samurai Jack. And also the ending of the fight was hilarious. I just laughed hysterically when the knife blew up in Scaramouche's face. I just thought that was awesome because it was so unexpected and climactic the way that fight ended. So that was just awesome. Other thoughts on the episode. The priestess, when those babies are being born, the priestess mentioned something that I thought was very interesting. She said, "The time is almost at hand. Once they succeed, you will again honor us with your presence." This makes me think that Aku has disappeared, or he's somehow gone. Because why would the priestess say that once they succeed, you will again honor us with your presence, as if Aku hasn't been around? And the beginning did seem a little odd, because why would they be worshiping an idol of Aku rather than Aku directly? So when the episode first started and I saw the priestess worshiping the idol of Aku, I did think to myself, wait a minute, where is Aku? Because as we know, Aku is a very hands-on villain who likes to oversee his pet projects when he attacks Jack. And so the fact that the priestess was worshiping an idol of Aku did strike me as a little odd. Like, wait a minute, where's Aku? And then this was later confirmed when the priestess said that you will once again grace us with your presence. So that's a little interesting twist that I wasn't expecting. That maybe Aku is somehow disappeared, or he's not around. And it's interesting because this also conflicts with what happened on the fight with Scaramouche. Because in the middle of the fight, Scaramouche calls Aku, and you can hear Aku answer the phone on the other end. So something weird is going on. On one hand, Scaramouche is able to call Aku in the middle of a fight, so we hear Aku on the other end of the line. But on the other hand, we have a priestess worshiping Aku, saying that you will once again grace us with your presence, as if he's somehow been absent. So at some point in the future, those two things have to be reconciled. Another thought, the Aku voice acting is a pretty decent imitation. Of course, nothing will replace old boy. I can't remember his name, but nothing will replace him, but the voice imitation is pretty decent. Also, we've seen multiple instances in this episode of this knight on the horse. And for those of you who are getting familiar with Berserk, you'll remember Skull Knight on the horse. And I'm just wondering who this is. Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Is it an antagonist? Is it an anti-hero in the world who wants to fight alongside Jack, like maybe the Scotsman? Like, I'm really wondering who this is. And it also makes me wonder about what his presence indicates, because it raises the question of whether or not Jack is really going insane, whether he's losing his mind, or maybe it's the effect that this knight is having on him. Because when Jack is fighting Scaramouche, and in the middle of that fight, he starts hallucinating. We see his hallucination, and then directly after that, we see the knight. So I'm wondering, is the knight the one having the sort of mental effect on Jack, or is Jack really going insane? So again, it just raises questions about who this knight on a horse is. So that was pretty much it for this episode review. I really like the setup for upcoming episodes in terms of the daughters of Aku. They've introduced this very early on, that the daughters of Aku seem like they're going to be the main antagonists for this season. Of course, Aku is the villain, but his emissaries will be the antagonists, it looks like, for a significant portion of this season. So this was a great first episode of Samurai Jack. The biggest highlight being, of course, Scaramouche, the purple pimp singing magical android assassin Scaramouche, and just happy to say that Jack is back. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.